Thank you for coming to our live streaming session. Could you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Hi, I'm Alicia Rogers. I am an assistant professor at the University of Texas at Arlington, and I've had my lab there now since January 22, so I just hit my 2-year anniversary on that. My pathway into academia has been a little bit unconventional because I've kind of changed everything almost at every single stage of my career. So I started out actually as a computer science undergraduate student who was recruited into computer science, which was at Baylor University, which was really important for me because I was a low-income student, and that was a way that I was able to afford going to undergrad, was the scholarship money that came with the recruitment. While I was there, I did work study, and I worked as a fly food technician in the lab of Dr. Samchul Nam, and he told me that I should pursue internships, and so I went and found internships in biology programs where I could apply my computer science expertise to do bioinformatic projects or computational biology projects. I went on to graduate school at Caltech, where I learned to pipette and focused on understanding how the pyrene pathway mediates transcriptional silencing using Drosophila as a model system. And then when it was time to decide what to do after grad school, I ended up pursuing a postdoc position in the lab of Carolyn Phillips and switching my model organism to C. elegans, and fell in love with the C. elegans germline as a model system. And I then went on the job market, unsure of what kind of career state or institution type I would like to be at, so I applied to PUIs, R2s, and R1s, and I ended up at UT Arlington, which is a minority-serving R1 institution, one of the few in the country. And I opened my lab trying to understand how small RNA pathways maintain homeostatic gene regulation across developmental time, despite routine environmental and genetic stressors that an organism experiences every day of its existence.
It's really cool. Can you comment on the difficulties of being a woman in STEM and coming from a low-income background?
Yeah, so, didn't expect this. Sorry. Oh my gosh. I was the only woman in computer science in my year, which was really hard. I felt really isolated. Sorry. Did not expect that. But it really showed me how important it is for everyone to feel engaged and supported, thank you, and whether they're pursuing just like their undergraduate degree or continuing on for each stage of education. So that was actually a really isolating experience, but I love doing science, and but I've always struggled with imposter syndrome. Sorry, I don't know what's going on. And so I think a lot of people struggle with imposter syndrome, and it's really hard because when you have imposter syndrome, you don't know who you can talk to about that. But I had really encouraging mentors at every step that I feel really fortunate to have had. They are the ones who told me that grad school was an option for me and that I could get paid to pursue a PhD as a student in STEM. And when I was doing internships, I worked with Dr. Barbara Wold and Dr. Eric Davidson at Caltech, and they both really encouraged me to pursue grad school, which I didn't know was an option based off of my background. So there's a lot of kind of hidden curriculum around pursuing each kind of career stage as you advance in academia. And I was fortunate to have people that would let me in on the secrets and the details that they learned. And so that is something that I'm trying to be very mindful of. I'm sorry to give you that. It's contagious. Oh my gosh.
I know.
But so I was actually really excited when I went to Caltech. I was in the biology cohort at 2011, and there were 2 other women which we're all actually at TAGC this year, which is really exciting. But 2 women in a cohort of like 12 to 15 students is not very many. So we formed a really tight-knit group to try and support each other, and also that kind of fed into like future classes, like a really tight group to support each other. And we even have like a ladies in science chat that we still text with now. But so I have always kind of at all my career stages tried to work to make sure that the environment can be both in the lab space and just like in bigger spaces, be supportive where people can feel safe to communicate, and also try to be very transparent about like my imposter syndrome that I feel, because I think it's a more commonly experienced thing, and to share the kind of hidden curriculum things that I was fortunate to have a mentor that like told me about, or that I've learned by mistake, also while going through these career transitions. But yeah, being a woman in STEM can be really isolating if you're not in a supportive and inclusive environment, and that extends, I think, very much beyond just being a woman in STEM, but all identities. If you don't have a representative mentor or someone that you can look to see like that they did it so you can do it too, and kind of pave that way. Yeah.
So when you're talking about people who you look up to, are they your mentors in grad school, or is it like family members?
Yeah, so I didn't really have anyone in my immediate family. I'm the first person in my family to pursue beyond an undergraduate degree, and I was like one of the first ones to pursue an undergraduate degree. So like my mom and my sister have been big supporters of me, even though they don't understand what I do, pursuing what I love. And I think that probably the most influential mentor that I had was actually Dr. Sangchul Nam, who he told me like the first thing I needed to do was apply for internships. I was just making fly food in his lab, and he kind of set me on this career trajectory. And then at every single stage, I've had really supportive mentors. One of the things that I have done is try to find mentors that are young female PIs so that I can see how they handle different situations, even aside from the science, and like get career advice to them that is a little bit more tailored to me and my identity. And so in grad school, I was co-advised by Dr. Alexei Ervin and Dr. Kata Feoshtuk, but Kata was really my main mentor, and she continues to support me to this day, and I reach out to her all the time with questions that I have, and she's just like a great letter of support writer for me, and encourages me to apply for everything that I need. I also really look up to my postdoc advisor, Carolyn Phillips, who was supportive of me going on the job market early on in my postdoc, and continues to give me feedback on scientific ideas and keep in touch with me. Dr. Swathi Arur has also been a really great mentor for me, especially my science kind of has verged into reproductive biology, even though I'm more of a bioinformatics, small RNA biology person. And she's been really great at giving me feedback in this new arena, and also providing letters of support to help me get to different applications that I need, and inviting me to give a talk at the Houston area worm meeting group, like putting me up for kind of sponsor positions where helping me be seen in my career stage.
So we have some questions coming from the chat actually.
Okay.
And so someone was wondering, how do you find professor mentors who embody your values? They are saying that they have had professors tell them not to have a family if they want success. So.
Well, I'm a mom. Actually, I'm pregnant with number 2 right now. So my PhD mentors also had 2 kids while I was in their lab as a PhD student. Carolyn Phillips has also had a child since I was in her postdoc lab. I think that you can have a family and be successful, and it sounds like maybe those professor mentors aren't the right mentor match for you, and maybe have different expectations or values of what a successful career is. So what I would say first is like, try and define what a successful career is for you and what you expect for your career. And then try and find a mentor that values those things. I would reach out to mentors to try to just have casual conversations with them. Also, your mentor, you can also have informal mentors that aren't just like your PhD or postdoc advisor, but like a network of mentors, of people that you meet at conferences that you can talk to. And so it doesn't have to be this formal PhD or postdoc mentor. You can have a wide network. Actually, you should have a wide network of informal mentors that can help you along your career path. There's also, I've been told there's different kinds of mentors. So there's like sponsors who put you up for awards, who recommend you for things, invite you for talks. And then there's more like the nitty-gritty mentors, like the sciencing mentors that are gonna give you feedback on what you're writing for your science or your project design ideas.
So earlier on, you've touched on having imposter syndrome. So one of our audiences are saying that they also have imposter syndrome, and they are older, but they would like to go back to school. So do you have any advice on how they could try to deal with the sense of not being, not belonging to school?
Yeah, so again, I think imposter syndrome, more people feel it than they let on, because that's part of the thing, is when you have imposter syndrome and you don't talk about it, then you're really caged into that. And so that's one reason I find that when I talk to people about the imposter syndrome, they're like, I had no idea you felt that way. I feel that way too. And so I would suggest making friends that you feel comfortable with and talking about that. And that's where like being able to talk to the other women that were in my cohort has always been a great source of support for that. I think also just remembering that there are ways to find the resources that you need in terms of like how to go back to school and like study for the way that school is now maybe is totally different. I know I'm teaching now, and the way courses are structured are very different from when I took them, but there are resources for learning how to study or navigate those courses, and just like familiarizing yourself with what resources you need and then pursuing them can help, I think, kind of mitigate the effects of imposter syndrome, because you're taking an action for yourself.
Someone commented, your story is amazing. How do you use your experiences to be a mentor for people from similar backgrounds?
So one of the key reasons I went to UT Arlington was because I felt like out of being able to do my R1 science, it is a university where I can have a big impact on a lot of students from very different backgrounds. So UT Arlington does have a large makeup of low-income undergraduate students who may not have those same opportunities, or been handed down that hidden curriculum of what to do if you want to pursue a career in STEM. And so that's kind of the first thing that I did, was like try to find a position where I could help and be that mentor that I had for future generations and future scientists. Another thing that I do for students that are in my lab specifically is I kind of tailor their mentoring style specific to them and what they need. And I ask them in advance kind of what they might need, and then and what their career goals are, so that I can help give them the best advice I can. But so I know mentoring style is not one size fits all, but also mentoring changes as time goes on. So the things that you need as a trainee in the beginning of someone's lab is probably not the same things you need when you're coming up towards the end. So I try to check in with my trainees and make sure that I'm giving them the mentoring that they need in that moment, and that we can adjust and change as time goes on, as they develop their more concrete decisions on what they'd like to do with their careers, and making sure that I can help them make the connections and the networks that they need to go on and be successful in that. I have only had my lab open for 2 years, so have a little bit more limited experience than if I'd had it open for 10 years. But every summer that I've been there, I have had students working in my lab during the summer through paid internship programs. So the Lewis Stokes Alliance for Minority Participation in Science, or LSAMP, as well as the McNair Scholars Program. I've had an LSAMP student and a McNair student in my lab. And I really think that undergraduates deserve to be paid for working in the lab space. So at UTA we have programs where students can get paid through the university to do research experiences and get a credit for a course, I think. And so I have all my undergrads apply for those, as well as the internships. If students are eligible for work study, I offer work study positions just to make sure that they have the opportunity to gain this research experience while getting paid, so that they can maybe be able to focus on their research and their academics a little bit more and not have to work as many jobs outside of the university. As a teacher, because I think mentoring also applies in the classroom, I posted every single opportunity for research experiences, paid internships, whether they were like academic research or industry research, that I could find every class and would remind my students of them, and kind of blast email them out, and tried to connect. I taught genetics, tried to connect what we were learning in the class to different things that might be applicable to different fields of interest that they might have, or different career paths, whether that was kind of the medical route. And also just tried to provide suggestions or mentoring tips on how to study for exams, prepare for exams, trying to make sure that they were engaged and prepared, not just in the coursework, but then opportunities outside of the classroom too.
So while we're on the topic of teaching, what courses do you teach and what is your teaching philosophy?
So I right now only teach genetics, so I will only have to teach one course a year until tenure, and it will be genetics every year. And so for me, I want students to be able to engage with the course material, learn the core principles of genetics, as we kind of define a set of like educational aims or goals for the class. What's really rewarding is when you can see the concepts click and that students can start to apply them to other questions or other aspects, or it gets them more engaged and interested. But part of students being able to become engaged in the course is making sure that everyone feels comfortable, respected in the space, and heard. And so I try to engage students with asking them questions about the concepts and the materials, asking them what was confusing or what they don't understand. Because really, I just want them to be able to get the most out of the course while feeling comfortable and confident that they're able to learn the material. So in part, I use different kind of assessment or teaching techniques, because not everyone has the same learning style, to try to do that and reach as broad of an audience as possible. But it's hard with a big undergrad class.
Yeah. For your course, do you get to change up the curriculum, or is there like a specific set of like topics that you cover every year?
So it's a team taught course at my university, which means that there are multiple faculty teaching it, and it is expected that we all kind of teach the same uniform material, so that it didn't matter which section students got put into when they registered for courses, which I think is great, because then it doesn't matter which professor you get, you should be getting the same core concepts. I do change things a little bit to make sure that my students are able to engage with the concepts. And we are doing a bit of a restructuring of the course right now to make sure we're really focusing on what students need to get out of the course. Because genetics is a great course to take if you are studying for the MCAT. So
taking a slight detour from that,
Yeah.
what has been the most rewarding part of your career?
Oh, the most rewarding part of my career. I'm still kind of early on, right? So I think that right now, one of the most rewarding parts of my career is seeing my new grad students in the lab really engage with the science. goal is that not only can I provide a good mentor-mentee relationship for my students and a great environment in the lab for them to pursue their scientific interests and their training, but that they really love what they're doing, so they're happy to come in every day and engage in lab meetings and in different discussions and topics. And so far, it's been really fun to see my students, like when they make a really big kind of discovery, or their experiment works, or they troubleshoot an experiment that was not working, to see the excitement that they have for that.
What would you say is the coolest experiment or result that you have done in your lab so far?
In my lab so far, so we have a really fun mutant where there's a lot of different phenotypes. So this was a mutant where we weren't sure if there was going to be any phenotypes at all. It is a small RNA homeostasis mutant. And my first grad student who joined my lab was like, for your rotation project, let's just see if we find any phenotypes at all. Like, knowing that phenotype hunting can take a long time and you may never find a phenotype. And he found like 5 or 6 different phenotypes. So it's opened up a really nice area where we can explore different things and pursue different things.
When your students came up to you with results, were they really excited, or were they like, because when I had like experimental results, sometimes I felt myself a little bit, I'm like, is this the real thing that I'm actually seeing? So how do you kind of like navigate like to reassure your student that that's like an actual result, or like how do you validate if that's the case?
Yeah, so one of the things that, usually when there's an exciting result, I'm first like, oh my gosh, that's so cool, woo! But then we talk about the specific controls of the experiment, or how the experiment was done, just to make sure that the student feels confident, like, yes, I did the controls that I needed to do for this experiment, so that they don't doubt their results. You know, we make sure we do plenty of replicates also. But one thing that we do when we're planning the experiments is we kind of talk through what different potential outcomes could be, and what that would mean and why that would mean a certain thing. So when we've been planning the experiment so far, we kind of go through the logic of the design, so that they feel confident with the logic of the design, but then just kind of check afterwards that everything was done. We've checked all the boxes, we've done all the controls, we can feel really confident in this result. And yeah, just reassuring students, like, you know, if you've done it multiple times and you're getting the same result, it's the same thing. And even if it's not the result we expected, that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It just means we're going to go a different route, and try to understand why we got that answer.
So if you could do any type of experiment, what would it be and why?
Any type of experiment. So I love doing the bioinformatics. That's kind of my comfort zone, and so I love doing big multi-omic projects where one of the things that I'm really interested in trying is where you can take a single like germline cell and extract mRNA from it to do mRNA and small RNA sequencing, but also extract the chromatin accessibility from that cell, so you can correlate all of those genomic data sets together from a single cell or a single tissue, single animal. I think that would be really exciting to do.
So how hard was it to transition from computer-based science to the wet lab and then to now where you're doing both?
I never really gave up the computer-based science. What I would say is I fell in love with gene regulation without realizing it. So when I was doing the computationally based projects during my internships, or any of the projects that I did during undergrad in computer science, I always kind of was doing something related to gene regulation, and specifically to RNA-mediated gene regulation. And I didn't even realize it until I had to write kind of my story arc for a fellowship proposal. And then it kind of all connected. But I would say, for me, coming from the computer science background, the logic of things really makes sense. And the hardest part going to biology was sometimes biology experiments don't work because the room was more humid that day than they were another day. And that was really hard to kind of figure out how to troubleshoot. So that was something that was the most important thing that I learned in grad school is how to troubleshoot biology experiments to make sure that you can interpret the results very clearly. But I have always kind of developed my research projects around using some form where I can have my bioinformatics background, so I can go into my comfort zone if the molecular experiments aren't working.
How do you avoid troubleshooting, making your imposter syndrome worse?
Oh, you can't avoid troubleshooting. I think, so like I just said, learning how to troubleshoot is the biggest skill set I think I learned in grad school, and one of the most important ones. My mentor, Kata, had told me if everything works the first time, you're not learning anything, right? Because it's just too easy. And that was something that I really needed to hear at the time, because I thought I had to be perfect, I had to get everything done perfectly right the first time. And I realized once she told me that, like, yeah, it's right, you don't learn how to troubleshoot your experiments. So that is a core thing in my lab. I try to teach everyone how to troubleshoot, how to reason through the different ways to troubleshoot an experiment so that you're minimizing the variability. And so I think to minimize imposter syndrome, you have to learn how to troubleshoot and be confident that you know it's not that, you know, there are troubles or problems that are going to arise or mistakes that are going to happen, but if you're confident in your ability to fix that, change what you need to, then that's the important key to like repressing that imposter syndrome aspect.
So to end this session, what is a piece of advice you would like to give to current students?
Oh, a piece of advice to give to current students. One, really kind of reflect on what you want for your career, what success looks like to you, and then try and find a network of mentors that can help you get to that place. Give yourself grace sometimes, because we are human and things happen and no one can be perfect all the time. But make sure that you have that support network that even when you can't give yourself grace, you have other people building you up and supporting you. I think that's really important. But success for everyone doesn't look the same. And so define success for yourself.